Okay, we are unexpectedly back in our Bible study series, John or Lazarus, who wrote the fourth gospel. This is going to be episode 9, Erastus is Lazarus. Again, I thought we were going to kind of close this study out about a week or so ago, but this is why we leave it open in a format like this so we can attack some things that if something new comes up, we can discuss them. So this is going to be a comparison of Acts 19 and the epistle of 3rd Lazarus, which commonly known as 3rd John. So just a note here, in this Bible study series, we have proved, if you're willing to accept it, that the fourth gospel was written by Lazarus and was not written by the Apostle John. And by extension, it's likely that 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John or Lazarus were actually written by Lazarus as well. References to those books would be referred to as the Gospel according to Lazarus and 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Lazarus in this study. If you haven't already seen it, check out the entire playlist, John or Lazarus, who wrote the fourth gospel. That'll give you a good background of what we got here. But this episode alone is good. I hadn't seen this. Like I woke up today, I felt like the Lord was just telling me to check out Acts 19 and take a look at 3rd Lazarus there to see the names and just make the connections here. So the purpose today is to investigate a theory that the Erastus of Acts 19 in the New Testament is actually Lazarus, the beloved disciple whom Jesus raised from the dead, who is also the author of the fourth gospel. So our method to investigate the theory, we're going to start with a comparison, as I mentioned, of Acts 19 with the epistle of 3rd Lazarus. And additionally, we're going to look at some other clues regarding Lazarus's need to leave Jerusalem and what his occupation was in Jerusalem and in Corinth. So a reminder, this is key here as we read the Bible. If you read it as a mystery novel, we're going to be able to catch the clues that the author is using in the narrative as he's trying to lead us to come to a conclusion. So where Erastus is mentioned, we have 3 mentions of Erastus in the Bible. This is a good place to start off. So Acts 19, it says, so he, Paul, sent into Macedonia 2 of those who ministered to him, Timothy and Erastus, but he himself stayed in Asia for a time. And then our second account here, we have Romans 16. Gaius, my host and the host of the whole church, greets you. Erastus, the treasurer of the city, greets you. And Quartus, a brother. And the final mention is in 2 Timothy. Paul says, Erastus stayed in Corinth, but Trophimus I have left in Miletus sick. So a quick conclusion we can make regarding Erastus is that he traveled with Paul for a time, but made his home in Corinth, and that Erastus was the treasurer of the city of Corinth. What's helpful there is to know that Romans was most likely written from Corinth, so that kind of helps to conclude that he was a treasurer of the city of Corinth. Gaius is another name we have mentioned along with Erastus a few times. Gaius is mentioned along with Erastus in Romans 16, and he's also mentioned earlier in Acts 19, not in the same verse, but a few verses earlier. It says, so the whole city was filled with confusion and rushed into the theater with one accord, having seized Gaius and Aristarchus, Macedonians, Paul's travel companions. And Gaius is also mentioned in 3rd Lazarus. So we're going to do a comparison here, Acts 19 and 3rd Lazarus. We've got this matrix of names. We already just touched upon how Gaius was mentioned there, both Acts 19 and 3rd Lazarus. And as we mentioned above, he was also mentioned in Romans 16. And in 3rd Lazarus, we have Demetrius, and he's also mentioned in Acts 19. In Acts 19, Demetrius is a bad guy, and in 2nd Lazarus, he's a good guy. So some might say, oh, it can't be the same guy. But let's remember, the reason they're all preaching the gospel is so that people can be saved, change lives. So this could be a whole another study in itself. Demetrius, he went from a bad guy to a good guy, probably received the gospel from Paul and Gaius and Erastus, Lazarus. So we shouldn't be surprised if people get saved once in a while in the book of Acts, right? So we also have, again, Acts 19 and 3rd Lazarus. We have Erastus and Lazarus, though Lazarus, he's not named specifically, but he is the author of, it says 2nd Lazarus here, it should say 3rd Lazarus. And Erastus we have in Acts 19. Again, we're going to argue that these are the same people, Erastus, same person, Erastus and Lazarus. This is interesting too. So Lazarus, we know, is the beloved disciple of the fourth gospel, the one who wrote the fourth gospel. Interesting enough, Erastus, the name meaning, I looked this up this morning, it means beloved. And right there, that should just put off some bells and whistles in our head. Is this a coincidence? I think not. It looks like Lazarus chose a very appropriate new name for himself when he moved to Corinth. So another question comes up, why would Lazarus move to Corinth to begin with? Lazarus could not have stayed in Jerusalem and lived a normal life. Remember, Jesus had raised him from the dead. This would have been impossible for him to lead a normal life. He would have obtained rock star status among the common people, and among the religious Jews, he would have been a target for death, which we already saw that in the fourth gospel. They wanted to kill him. So this would necessitate a move, and he appears to have chosen Corinth as his new home. Now we'll look at the occupation of both Erastus and Lazarus. In Corinth, we know that Erastus was the treasurer of the city, and in Jerusalem, Lazarus likely worked in the temple. We spoke about this in the previous videos in the same Bible study series, but now we know with today's revelation that not only did he work in the temple, but specifically, he most likely worked in the treasury of the temple. We're going to look at that here. In the Gospel of Lazarus, chapter 8, the author says, "These words Jesus spoke in the treasury as he taught in the temple, and no one laid hands on him, for his hour had not yet come." Now, who would have known that Jesus spoke those words in the treasury except the author of that gospel, which again, we concluded was Lazarus. No other gospel speaks of anything happening in the treasury. However, Mark and Luke talk about the widow's two mites story. Now it says, now Jesus sat opposite the treasury. Look, they're not in the treasury like we saw in the gospel of Lazarus. They sat opposite the treasury and saw how the people put money into the treasury, and many who are rich put in much. So again, that's another clue that Lazarus not only worked in the temple but in the treasury. Lazarus also mentions the money box that Judas has in the fourth gospel. That's in chapter 12, verse 6, chapter 13, verse 29. No other gospel mentions this money box that Judas had. So consider, Lazarus, the true author of the fourth gospel, seems to focus on items regarding money and the treasury. This is no coincidence, I would say. Erastus/Lazarus was a treasurer both in Jerusalem and in Corinth. So, my conclusion, Erastus and Lazarus are the same person. There's probably so much more to dig in here. I didn't have time to look at everything. I just wanted to look at the surface things. I think these are pretty deep alone, but I wanted to get this video out just to start the conversation. This is pretty exciting. Let me know if you have any comments. I'd love to continue to discuss this, and we can add it to future episodes if need be. But until next time, contend earnestly for the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints, and God bless.